Okay, thank you. Thank you for a brilliant morning's set of presentations, and I hope I kick off the afternoon in slightly different fashion. I'm just going to talk about some image making, some work, one work in progress, and two works that are complete. And I'm thinking about the theme of belonging and unbelonging, but mostly about belonging and being in particular landscapes. And there's a lot of talk this morning, conversations about families and grandparents and parents and that mixture. So I'm also going to talk about that. And in my photographic practice, talking about landscape, where there aren't necessarily people within those. They're not peopled landscapes, but they have a resonance, and resonance and importance to me, and how I represent that photographically. And then there's images talking about landscape where there is no landscape, but you're talking about a site or a place of being. So it's putting those two together. And through the photography, I work primarily with the still image, with these ones I'm showing. And I've got quite a commitment to the still image, even though we're showing a video that's made up of still images, and and then the other work is stills taken from a film. So I'm also interrogating the way that, as a photographer, how I construct meaning through images that someone else has taken, if it's a film or a particular archive. As there's a lot of talk about decolonizing the archive or working with sort of colonial archives, and how you actually do that as a practitioner, and what that means. I don't quite, it doesn't marry me, it doesn't marry easily with me, the idea of decolonizing anything. So I'm thinking about that when I'm talking about these works as well. So the first one is a BFI film. It's called Springtime in an English Village. So it's very appropriate for now. So I'm at the moment doing a stop motion series of images from it and large scale photographs. And it was made, even though it was made specifically to be sent to West Africa and the Caribbean to entice people they wanted to work in the UK. So even though it's about black people, black children, it was not intended for an English audience or a European audience. It was to entice people back. So the narrative they construct is still showing a particular type of England that we sort of recognise, but through my intervention into it, I'm working with the fact when the people in it break out of that colonialised lens, when they start to really engage with the lens rather than the performative aspect of what they're expected to do, what they've been instructed to do. When people break out of that, in any archives, that usually happens. You know, you ask to pose a particular way, maintain something, but sometimes people are just going to look away, or they'll look at the photographer and they have that particular look. So it's interesting when people break out of those setups and they start to have agency, almost agency, and it's captured in the photograph. Sometimes they don't know that they're being captured, and that's the word I'm choosing to use, they're captured in the photograph. So it's both a contradiction, they're captured, but they've chosen to engage with the lens in a slightly different way. And by my intervention, I'm really putting that up front and centre with them. So the first one, Indigenous Mutation, it's in England in village, the first film anyway, the name has gone from my mind. It's about 1944 in Northamptonshire. So it's while the war was end, and there's two girls in this village, and you'll see what happens. And in the film, they have a voting, one of them becomes the May Queen. So it's taking out particular points in that narrative. As in their formal structure, many of the films mirror the conventions of early colonial travelogues, imagining a world that is deemed exotic and remote to the viewers, while those earlier films, foreign spaces, represented the primitive to British viewer. These British travelogues inverted this, granting a form of civilization to their African audiences. So there's some sort of problematic parts of that film. But by animating it, by catching particular moments when they're looking back, when they're actively participating in this ritual, it's wanting to free them from that particular set of colonialized gaze. So the next two I'm showing is a piece of work, Hidden Heritage History Stories, and it's about the Lee Valley Park, which is a 23-mile local park that goes from Ware in Hertfordshire down to the Thames. It's somewhere I've lived very close to since I was about 7. I've done pieces of work that I've walked. We were there last week, only listening to nightingales, you know, in the darkening. So, so as a commission I had to represent that park. It doesn't have a gallery space or anything like that. And when it gets down to the Thames, it's tidal. In the north, it's made up of a series of rivers, so it goes through lots of different boroughs. It's also, parts of it are owned by electricity board, gas companies. It, you know, meanders down. It's been, it's gravel extraction. There's vegetable growing. There's a lot of Italian soldiers after the Second World War started to set up rural, they were growing things along that stretch. So it's a very contested part of London, but at the same time, there's a massive amount of walking and leisure activities go on there. So a piece of work I had to do was looking at that particular strategic points down in the Thames. People often say that's where the Industrial Revolution began, due to the gin that was made there and the gathering of corn, the grinding of corn. So I looked at particular spots, and the exhibition was shown at a sports centre in the kind of middle area. So it was by where you bought your tickets to go swimming and everything. So you'd have to walk past this very museum-type setup with objects, pieces of wood, stone that appear to have been picked up or part of an archaeological study, but there are also items, the gravel extraction as well, and then images at certain parts. So it was both confusing and illuminating at the same time, the way archaeological exhibitions can be. But it was, so it's just how you make sense of that particular long landscape through one small exhibition. Hidden Histories, Heritage Stories, damn, that's what it's called. So I work with the rangers quite a lot who manage the land, do the educational work, undertake studies on behalf of different scientists. So they're both making and unmaking this particular kind of former industrial landscape, as well as the fact that now it's to do with recreation. It's, you know, it's very disturbed land, it's very managed. So part within the sports centre, you have to walk past these when you're getting your tickets. So part of it, I started to construct someone, this black person who in the Victorian era would have worked at the cotton mill, grinding corn there. So he's kind of appears in a number of times. But also these items, these pieces of wood, part of them came from the site, part of them I just got at the wood yard, and they have images of the wooden parts of this particular mill. I mean, now it's a well looked after tourist attraction, but at the time it was quite shambolic. So it's kind of wood on wood, and also constructed a small, almost fake exhibition, another geological, archaeological pieces. They were from that site and they had images on them. There were kind of collections of soil, water from the different rivers, things that I found in the ground, samples of plants, and then images of the workers, the rangers who were working on the land at that particular time. So it's part family album, part document, part just a moment in a particular year. So it's part of an illusion of items that you'd get in a geological museum or a natural history museum. And then while outside there's this particular type of view going on in some places, as equally constructed and managed as the rest of the landscape is, and those particular items as constructed as that. So, because the essence of the interior and the exterior, and the memories as you go outside to these huge gravel extraction hills, gravel that's been extracted, and the detritus and the mechanics that are left from the mill. So part of it was, I said, it was working with all the rangers that were there and taking particular snap at that particular year of the 12 that were working there. So these are quite tiny pictures. They've become monstrously huge here. So it's a bit of land. They're photographed in an area they work in, some items they may use, and a bit of the landscape that they actually work with, whether it's a tiny detail or the building work that goes on, or tree barking or tree bark or whatever's around there at the time. So the last bit I'm showing, this is an introduction to the video I'm going to show, which is about 8 minutes long. And again, echoing some of the stuff that went on this morning. It's about, it's looking at an archive from the 1950s of a newly arrived migrant from the Caribbean, from Guyana, who comes to England. And that's the part of the atlas from that particular moment. And it's the letters he wrote back to his wife, who was still in Georgetown in Guyana. And some of the photos from the family albums. So there are lots of letters. They're practically at least one a week over about 18 months. So you should be able to read some of it, but that there are also those blue airmail letters that people remember them from the 50s. So because they're about 60 years old now, the ink, you can see both sides of the letter at the same time. So they're beautiful abstract pictures, but they're also letters. So they have there's a memory in the letters themselves, even though, there's memory in them. So it's crossed with an audio from his wife, also talking back to those letters, talking back about their time in the 50s. So that time across, leaving the kind of semi-rural parts of Georgetown, Guyana, and then coming back to England. So that sense of moving across the Atlantic, it's compressed, going from the 50s to, 2019 at this particular moment. So if that migrating, that getting to know another country is to do with urban areas as well. So, so I'm just going to show the video on this, if I can remember how we did this.